In the vastness of space, humanity had grown into something extraordinary. Over centuries of exploration and innovation, they had built an empire that stretched across hundreds of star systems. It was a time of prosperity, but also tension. On the edge of human-controlled space, whispers of war were beginning to spread. A mysterious alien faction known as the Vryktal had been expanding aggressively, consuming everything in their path. Their technology rivaled humanity's, but their methods were brutal and merciless. Colonies along the outer rim had already fallen silent under their onslaught. Admiral Jeho stood silently on the observation deck of the Aegis Dawn, his flagship. His sharp eyes scanned the endless expanse of stars outside the reinforced glass. He wasn't alone. Beside him stood Hyman, his trusted second-in-command. She was younger than him by a decade, but possessed a brilliance that made her indispensable. Her calm demeanor masked the weight she carried as the fleet's tactical genius. Jeho turned slightly to glance at her. "Do you think we're ready?" he asked. His voice low. Hyman didn't answer right away. Instead, she folded her arms and leaned against the railing. "We have the best ships, the most advanced weapons, and the bravest crew," she said finally. "But readiness isn't just about equipment or numbers. You know that better than anyone." Jeho nodded slowly. He did know. Memories of past battles lingered in his mind like ghosts. Each victory came at a cost: ships lost, lives extinguished, families torn apart. And now here they were again, standing on the precipice of another conflict. This time, though, it felt different. The stakes were higher. The enemy was stronger. Failure wasn't an option. The comm system crackled to life, interrupting their thoughts. "Admiral Jeho, incoming transmission from Earth Command," a voice announced. "Patch it through," Jeho replied without hesitation. A holographic display flickered to life in front of them, projecting the stern face of General Subin, the Commander-in-Chief of Earth's military forces. "Admiral Jeho," the general began, her tone formal yet urgent. "Intelligence reports confirm significant Vryktal activity near the Zeta Quadrant. They're fortifying positions, likely preparing for an invasion of our core territories. Your orders are clear. Intercept them before they can escalate further. Eradicate the threat completely." Jeho clenched his jaw but maintained his composure. "Understood, General. We'll mobilize immediately." The transmission ended, leaving behind an oppressive silence. Hyman broke it first. "This is it," she said softly. "No more waiting. No more preparation. It's happening now." Jeho let out a long breath. "Yes, it is." Hours later, humanity's battle fleet moved with precision through the cold vacuum of space. Thousands of vessels formed a colossal armada, each ship gleaming under the light of distant suns. From massive dreadnoughts bristling with cannons to nimble fighters darting between larger craft, the sight was awe-inspiring. At its heart was the Aegis Dawn, a towering behemoth of steel and energy shields, serving as both command center and symbol of human resilience. Inside the flagship, the crew worked tirelessly to ensure every system functioned flawlessly. Engineers scurried through corridors, checking power conduits and calibrating weapons. Pilots ran simulations in virtual cockpits, honing their skills for the inevitable dogfights ahead. Everyone understood the gravity of their mission. On the bridge, Jeho sat in the command chair, flanked by officers who relayed updates from various departments. Hyman stood nearby, studying data streams on a holoscreen. Her expression remained focused, though occasional furrows appeared on her forehead when troubling information surfaced. "Sir," one officer called out. "Long-range sensors detect debris fields consistent with recent skirmishes. Looks like someone's been fighting near the designated coordinates." Jeho frowned. "Any sign of survivors?" "Negative, sir. Just wreckage." He exchanged a glance with Hyman. Neither needed to say it aloud. The Vrigtal weren't wasting time. They were clearing obstacles in their path, leaving nothing behind. "We need to move faster," Jeho declared. "Increase speed to maximum. I want us there yesterday." "Aye, Admiral," the helmsman responded, adjusting controls as the fleet surged forward. Jeho couldn't shake the feeling of unease gnawing at him. Something about this mission felt off. Was it the scale? The unknown nature of the enemy? Or simply the burden of leadership pressing down on his shoulders? Whatever it was, he pushed it aside. Doubt had no place here. Not now. Meanwhile, aboard one of the smaller cruisers, a young pilot named Dong-Sik prepared for what might be his final flight. Unlike many of his peers, Dong-Sik hadn't joined the military out of patriotism or duty. He'd done it because he wanted to prove himself, to show the world that even someone from a humble background could make a difference. His squadron leader, Lieutenant Yoon-jin, approached him as he checked his fighter systems. "Nervous?" she asked, leaning casually against the cockpit hatch. Dong-Sik grinned nervously. "Is it that obvious?" Yoon-jin chuckled. "Don't worry. Everyone gets nervous before a big fight. Just focus on your training, and you'll be fine." "I hope so," Dong-Sik muttered. "You will," Yoon-jin assured him. "Besides, we've got the best fleet in the galaxy backing us up. Nothing can stop us." Her confidence was infectious, and Dong-Sik found himself smiling despite his fears. Maybe she was right. Maybe they really were unstoppable. Back on the Aegis Dawn, Jeho gathered his senior staff for a final briefing before reaching the Warzone. The room buzzed with quiet murmurs as officers reviewed maps and schematics projected onto the walls. When everyone settled, Jeho stepped forward. "Listen carefully," he began, his voice firm and steady. "What we're about to face won't be easy. The Vrigtal are ruthless, cunning, and well-armed. But we have something they don't: each other. We stand united, not just as soldiers, but as humans. Together, we'll protect our people, our homes, and our future." His words resonated deeply, igniting a spark of determination in everyone present. Even Hyman, usually reserved, allowed herself a small smile. When the meeting concluded, Jeho returned to the observation deck. Alone once more, he gazed out at the stars. Somewhere out there, the Vrigtal waited. But so did humanity's resolve. And soon they would meet. The journey into the Warzone was a tense one. Humanity's battle fleet moved like a shadow through the darkness of space, cloaked by advanced stealth technology that masked their approach. The ships glided silently past drifting chunks of debris, remnants of earlier battles fought between rival factions. Each piece told a story of destruction, and each one reminded the crew of what lay ahead. Admiral Jeho stood on the bridge of the Aegis Dawn, his sharp eyes scanning the viewscreen as it displayed the desolate expanse before them. Hyman worked tirelessly beside him, analyzing sensor data streaming in from reconnaissance drones sent ahead to scout the area. Her face was calm but focused, her fingers flying over holographic controls as she pieced together the picture of the battlefield they were about to enter. "Anything yet?" Jeho asked, breaking the silence. Hyman hesitated for a moment before replying. "Yes, sir. Drones have detected significant activity near the coordinates provided by Earth Command. It looks like the Vrigtal are building some kind of structure, a fortress maybe." Jeho frowned. "A fortress? In the middle of nowhere?" "It makes sense," Hyman explained. "If they're planning an invasion, they'll need a staging ground, a central hub to coordinate their forces. This could be it." Jeho nodded slowly. If the Vrigtal had constructed a fortress, it would mean trouble. Such a structure would be heavily defended, likely surrounded by thousands of enemy ships. Taking it down wouldn't be easy, but it was essential if humanity hoped to stop the invasion. "Can we get closer without being detected?" Jeho asked. We should be able to, Hyman replied. Our cloaking systems are top-notch, and the drones can feed us real-time intel while staying hidden. But once we engage, all bets are off. They'll know we're here. Understood, Jeho said. He turned to address the crew. All hands, prepare for combat maneuvers. Helm, bring us within visual range of the target. Weapons teams, stand by. The crew sprang into action, their movements precise and practiced. Pilots readied their fighters in hangar bays, while engineers double-checked every system aboard the capital ships. Everyone knew this was the moment they'd been preparing for. As the fleet approached the designated location, the view screen revealed a horrifying sight. Floating in the void of space was a massive orbital fortress, its jagged design resembling a monstrous beast crouching in wait. Surrounding it were countless Vryktal warships, their sleek forms bristling with weapons. Plasma cannons glowed ominously along the fortress's surface, ready to unleash devastation at a moment's notice. Jeho studied the scene carefully. How many ships do we count? He asked. At least 3,000, Hyman reported grimly. And that's just what's visible. There could be more docked inside the fortress itself. The numbers were staggering. Humanity's fleet was impressive, but they were outnumbered nearly 2-1. Still, Jeho didn't let doubt creep into his mind. Numbers alone wouldn't decide this battle. Strategy, precision, and courage would. Hyman, he said, turning to her, what's your assessment? She tapped a few commands into her console, pulling up detailed schematics of the fortress and surrounding ships. Their formation is tight, which means they're relying on sheer numbers to overwhelm any attackers. But that also makes them vulnerable to coordinated strikes. If we can disrupt their chain of command and disable key sections of the fortress, we might be able to turn the tide. Jeho considered her words. What about our quantum disruptors? Are they ready? They are, Hyman confirmed. But deploying them will require perfect timing. One misstep, and we risk exposing ourselves to counterattack. Then we'll make sure there are no missteps, Jeho said firmly. He turned back to the crew. Listen up. Here's the plan. We'll send out fighter squadrons to draw the enemy's attention away from our main fleet. While they're distracted, we'll deploy the quantum disruptors. These devices will create energy fields that cripple their propulsion systems and communication networks. Once they're immobilized, we'll advance on the fortress and finish the job. The officers nodded, understanding the gravity of their mission. There was no room for error. On board one of the smaller cruisers, Dong-Sik sat in his fighter's cockpit, running final checks on his systems. His squadron leader, Lieutenant Yoonjin, appeared on the comm screen. Remember the plan, she said. Keep them busy, but don't take unnecessary risks. Stay alive out there. Dong-Sik swallowed hard. Got it, ma'am. He wasn't the only one feeling nervous. Across the fleet, pilots exchanged quiet words of encouragement or simply sat in silence, steeling themselves for what was to come. For many, this would be their first taste of real combat. Back on the Aegis Dawn, Jeho gave the order. Launch fighters. All units, prepare for engagement. Doors slid open across the fleet, revealing rows of sleek fighters waiting to be deployed. With a deafening roar, engines ignited, propelling the tiny craft into the void. They zipped through space, forming intricate patterns as they positioned themselves for the attack. The first wave of fighters reached the Vryktal fleet moments later. Bright flashes lit up the darkness as plasma bolts streaked through space. The enemy ships responded immediately, launching swarms of interceptors to meet the intruders. Dogfights erupted everywhere, chaotic bursts of light and sound filling the void. From the bridge of the Aegis Dawn, Jeho watched the chaos unfold. "Hi, Min, status?" he asked. "The disruptors are ready," she replied. "Deploying now." Small drones carrying the quantum disruptors launched from the fleet, slipping through the chaos unnoticed. As they reached their designated positions, Hyman activated the devices remotely. Energy fields rippled outward, engulfing entire sections of the Reichstag fleet. Ships shuddered as their engines failed, leaving them adrift. Communication signals faltered, plunging the enemy into confusion. Jeho allowed himself a small smile. Phase 1 complete. Now, let's push forward. The main fleet surged ahead, cannons blazing as they targeted the immobilized enemy ships. Explosions erupted in brilliant bursts of light, illuminating the battlefield. Despite their numerical advantage, the Reichstag were struggling to regroup, but the battle was far from over. The orbital fortress remained intact, its plasma cannons firing devastating salvos at the advancing human fleet. Ships rocked violently as blasts shook their shields, forcing pilots to maneuver evasively. Amidst the chaos, Dongsik's squadron found itself caught in the crossfire. "Stay sharp," Yunjin shouted over the comms. "We need to hold them off a little longer." One of the enemy interceptors locked onto Dongsik's fighter, chasing him relentlessly. He twisted and turned, narrowly avoiding plasma bolts. Sweat trickled down his forehead as he struggled to shake his pursuer. Finally, spotting an opening, he looped around and fired a missile straight into the interceptor's cockpit. The enemy ship exploded in a fiery burst. Breathing heavily, Dongsik glanced at his instrument panel. Shields were holding for now. But how much longer could they keep this up? Despite the mounting pressure, Humanity's fleet pressed onward. On the Aegis Dawn, Jeho kept his gaze fixed on the fortress. "I'm in," he said. "How close are we?" "We're almost in range," she replied. "Just a little further." The fortress loomed larger with each passing second, its ominous silhouette dominating the view screen. Plasma cannons continued to fire, forcing the fleet to weave through deadly barrages. Suddenly, alarms blared across the bridge. "Shields down to 30%. An officer called out. Jeho clenched his fists. "Hold steady. We're not backing down now." As the fleet closed the distance, Hymen prepared the final phase of the attack. "Quantum disruptors are charging," she announced. "Ready to fire on your mark." Jeho took a deep breath. Fire. Bright beams of energy shot forth from the fleet's cannons, striking the fortress's defenses. Explosions rocked the structure, sending shards of metal spinning into space. The fortress groaned under the assault, its once imposing form beginning to crumble. For the first time since the battle began, hope flickered in the hearts of the human crew. They were winning. The battle raged on with relentless fury. Humanity's fleet surged forward, pushing deeper into the chaos of the Warzone. The orbital fortress loomed large now, its jagged surface scarred from the initial bombardment. Plasma cannons continued to fire, their deadly beams cutting through space as they sought to destroy the advancing human ships. Despite the damage already inflicted, the fortress remained a formidable threat. Admiral Jeho stood at the center of the Aegis Dawn's bridge, his expression grim but resolute. Around him, officers worked frantically to coordinate the fleet's movements and maintain defensive shields. Explosions lit up the view screen as enemy fire struck nearby ships, sending shockwaves rippling through the void. "Hold steady," Jeho commanded, his voice firm despite the tension in the air. "We're almost there." Hymen stood beside him, her eyes glued to the holoscreens displaying real-time data. "Sir, the disruptors are holding, but the fortress is still operational. If we don't take out those plasma cannons soon, we'll lose more ships." Jeho nodded. He knew she was right. Every second they delayed brought them closer to disaster. But he also knew that rushing blindly would only make things worse. Timing was everything. On board one of the cruisers, Dongsik fought desperately to stay alive. His fighter darted between enemy interceptors, narrowly avoiding plasma bolts that streaked past his cockpit. Sweat poured down his face as he struggled to keep his focus. The chaos around him was overwhelming. Flashes of light, deafening explosions, and the constant hum of his ship's engines filled his senses. "Lieutenant," Dong-Sik called over the comms, his voice strained. "I can't keep this up much longer." Yoon-Jin's voice crackled through the speaker. "Stay sharp, Dong-Sik. Reinforcements are inbound. Just hold on a little longer." Dong-Sik gritted his teeth and pushed his fighter harder, weaving through the enemy formation. He fired a volley of missiles, taking out 2 interceptors in quick succession. But for every enemy he destroyed, 2 more seemed to take their place. Back on the Aegis Dawn, Hyman analyzed the situation with growing urgency. "Admiral, the fortress's shields are weakening, but not fast enough. We need to concentrate our firepower if we want to break through." Jae-ho turned to her. "Can we adjust the disruptor fields? Maybe widen the gaps in their defenses?" "It's risky," Hyman admitted. "Expanding the fields could expose us to counterattacks. But if it works, it might give us the opening we need." "Do it," Jae-ho ordered. Hai-Min relayed the command to the engineering team. Moments later, the quantum disruptors pulsed with increased intensity, expanding their energy fields. Enemy ships caught within the disruption struggled even more, their systems failing completely. Gaps began to appear in the Vrykta's defensive line, creating opportunities for the human fleet to exploit. "Focus all cannons on the fortress," Jae-ho shouted. "Take out those plasma turrets." The fleet responded immediately. Bright beams of energy lanced through space, striking the fortress with devastating force. Sections of the structure crumbled under the assault, exposing its inner workings. Plasma cannons fell silent one by one as their mounts were obliterated, but the victory came at a cost. Several human ships were hit by retaliatory fire, their hulls breached and crews lost. Alarms blared across the fleet as casualties mounted. "Shields at 20%. An officer reported from the Aegis Dawn's tactical station. Jae-ho clenched his jaw. "Keep firing. Don't let up." Amidst the chaos, Dong-Sek's squadron found itself in the thick of the fighting. Yoon-Jin led the group with precision, her fighter darting through enemy formations like a blade slicing through smoke. She targeted key points, disabling enemy ships and clearing paths for her teammates to follow. "Dong-Sik, cover my 6, she ordered, banking sharply to avoid incoming fire. "On it," Dong-Sik replied, spinning his fighter around to engage the pursuing interceptors. His hands moved instinctively over the controls, unleashing bursts of laser fire that tore through the enemy craft. For a brief moment, the squadron managed to clear a path toward the fortress. Yoon-Jin seized the opportunity, leading her fighters in a daring strafing run along the structure's exposed surface. Their weapons pounded weak points, causing secondary explosions that further weakened the fortress's integrity. "Good work, everyone," Yoon-Jin said over the comms. "Now fall back before they regroup." As the squadron retreated, Dong-Sik glanced at his instrument panel. His shields were nearly depleted, and his fighter was leaking fuel. He knew he wouldn't last much longer. Inside the fortress, alarms wailed as systems failed and structural supports collapsed. The Vryktal crew scrambled to respond, their once organized ranks descending into panic. High above the command deck, Kelthur, their ruthless warlord, watched the destruction unfold with cold fury. How could this happen? He snarled, slamming his fist against the console. "Activate the emergency protocols. Launch all remaining ships. I will not allow these humans to win." His subordinates obeyed without question, scrambling to carry out his orders. Within moments, dozens of reserve ships emerged from hidden docks within the fortress, joining the fray outside. On the Aegis Dawn, Hyman detected the new threat immediately. "Admiral, reinforcements are incoming. Looks like they're throwing everything they've got at us." Jae-ho cursed under his breath. Divert power to the forward shields. Prepare for impact. The Reichtal reinforcements swarmed the human fleet, their numbers overwhelming. Fighters clashed in brutal dogfights, while capital ships exchanged salvos of plasma and energy beams. The battlefield became a swirling maelstrom of destruction, each side refusing to yield. Despite the odds, humanity held its ground. Pilots like Dongsek and Yunjin fought with everything they had, buying precious time for the fleet to press its advantage. Finally, the turning point came. Hyman's engineering team managed to recalibrate the quantum disruptors one final time, creating a massive surge of energy that engulfed the fortress. Entire sections of the structure disintegrated under the strain, including the primary reactor core. Direct hit. Hyman exclaimed. Their power grid is collapsing. Jeho wasted no time. All ships, target the core. Finish it. The fleet unleashed a concentrated barrage, pouring every available weapon into the exposed reactor. A blinding explosion erupted, consuming the fortress in a fiery inferno. Debris spiraled outward, wiping out nearby enemy ships caught in the blast radius. Cheers erupted across the fleet as the fortress was reduced to rubble. The Reichtal fleet, now leaderless and disorganized, began to retreat, but the celebration was short-lived. Damage reports flooded in from across the fleet. Ships listed helplessly in space, their crews struggling to survive. Among the losses was Dongsek's squadron. Only a handful of fighters returned, their battered hulls bearing witness to the ferocity of the battle. When the dust settled, Jeho stood silently on the bridge, staring at the wreckage of the fortress. They had won, but the cost had been high. Too high. Hai-Min approached him, her expression somber. It's over, sir. For now. Jeho nodded slowly. Yes, but this isn't the end. It's just the beginning. The destruction of the orbital fortress marked a turning point in the battle, but the war was far from over. Humanity's fleet had dealt a devastating blow to the Reichtal, yet remnants of their forces still posed a significant threat. Inside the crumbling ruins of the fortress, chaos reigned as the surviving Reichtal scrambled to mount a counterattack. Their leader, Kelther, refused to accept defeat. Kelther paced furiously across the command deck, his sharp claws clicking against the metal floor. Around him, officers worked frantically to restore order, shouting commands and relaying updates through static-filled comm systems. The fortress's reactor core had been critically damaged, and power levels were dropping rapidly. Secondary explosions rocked the structure, sending chunks of debris spiraling into space. We cannot let them win. Kelther roared, his voice echoing through the chamber. Launch every remaining ship. Target their flagship. If we destroy it, their morale will collapse. His subordinates hesitated, fear etched on their faces. One of them finally spoke up. Warlord, our forces are scattered. Many ships are immobilized or destroyed. Without the fortress, we lack coordination. Silence. Kelther snapped, cutting him off. I will not tolerate cowardice. Prepare my personal vessel for launch. I will lead the assault myself. The officer bowed quickly before retreating to carry out the order. Within moments, Kelther's massive flagship detached from the dying fortress, its sleek design bristling with weapons. It surged forward, flanked by what remained of the Reichtal fleet, a ragtag collection of battered ships, determined to fight to the bitter end. On board the Aegis Dawn, Admiral Jeho monitored the situation closely. Though the orbital fortress had been neutralized, he knew better than to celebrate prematurely. The Reichtal weren't finished yet, and their desperation made them dangerous. I'm in, he said, turning to his second-in-command. Status report. The enemy fleet is regrouping around Kelther's flagship, Hyman replied, her eyes scanning the holoscreens. They're forming a defensive perimeter, likely preparing for a final push. Jia-Ho frowned. Can we stop them? It depends, Hyman admitted. Our shields are holding, but several ships are critically damaged. If they manage to break through our lines, we could lose more than just fighters. We can't afford that, Jia-Ho said firmly. We need to take out Kelthur. Without him, the rest will fall apart. Hyman nodded. Agreed, but getting to him won't be easy. His flagship is heavily armored, and he'll have escorts protecting him. Then we go in directly, Jia-Ho decided. Assemble a boarding party. We'll infiltrate the fortress and eliminate him ourselves. Hyman raised an eyebrow. You mean, personally? Yes, Jia-Ho replied without hesitation. If we want this done right, we have to do it ourselves. Minutes later, Jia-Ho led a small team toward the hangar bay. Alongside him were Hyman, who insisted on joining despite her role as a strategist, and Sung-woo, a seasoned Marine known for his combat skills. Each member of the team carried specialized gear designed for close quarters combat aboard enemy vessels. As they boarded a transport shuttle, Sung-woo checked his weapon one last time. This is going to get messy, he muttered. That's why we're here, Jia-Ho said, his tone steady. Stick together, follow orders, and keep moving. We don't have time to waste. The shuttle launched from the Aegis Dawn and streaked toward Kelthur's flagship. Enemy fire lit up the void as the Vryktal attempted to intercept them, but the shuttle's agility allowed it to slip through the barrage. With a deafening clang, it docked inside the flagship's hangar bay. The moment the hatch opened, the team sprang into action. Plasma bolts zipped past as Vryktal soldiers rushed to meet them. Sung-woo took point, firing controlled bursts from his rifle that dropped enemies with precision. Hyman followed closely behind, using a portable disruptor device to disable automated turrets guarding the corridors. Jia-Ho brought up the rear, covering their backs while issuing quick commands. Move fast. We don't know how long we have before reinforcements arrive. The interior of the flagship was a labyrinth of narrow hallways and dimly lit chambers. Alarms blared constantly, adding to the tension. At every turn, they encountered resistance Vryktal warriors armed with energy blades and plasma rifles. The fighting was brutal and relentless, but the human team pressed onward, driven by sheer determination. After clearing several sections, they reached a security checkpoint guarded by a reinforced blast door. A holographic interface displayed a complex locking mechanism. Hyman, can you bypass it? Jia-Ho asked. She knelt beside the panel, her fingers flying over the controls. Give me a minute. Sung-woo stood watch, keeping an eye out for enemies. Suddenly, a group of Vryktal soldiers appeared at the far end of the corridor, opening fire immediately. Contact! Sung-woo shouted, taking cover behind a bulkhead. Jia-Ho joined him, returning fire with his sidearm. The exchange was intense, but Sung-woo managed to hold them off long enough for Hyman to finish her work. Got it, she exclaimed, stepping back as the door slid open with a hiss. They moved inside, finding themselves in a wide chamber filled with servers and control panels. In the center stood a large terminal connected to the ship's mainframe. This must be the command hub, Hyman said, studying the setup. If we disable this, we can cripple their systems. Do it, Jia-Ho ordered as Hyman worked. The sound of approaching footsteps echoed through the chamber. Sung-woo turned to face the entrance, raising his weapon. They're coming, he warned. Almost done, Hyman replied. Her voice strained. The first wave of Vryktal burst into the room, firing wildly. Sung-woo returned fire, dropping several enemies before being forced to retreat closer to the others. Hurry, Jia-Ho urged, providing covering fire. With a final keystroke, Hyman disabled the system. Lights flickered, and the hum of machinery faded as the ship's internal systems shut down. Done, she said breathlessly, but their victory was short-lived. As the lights dimmed, a towering figure emerged from the shadows, Calther himself. His armor gleamed menacingly in the dim light, and his glowing eyes locked onto Jeho. "You dare invade my ship?" Calther growled, drawing a massive energy blade. "You will pay for your insolence." Without waiting for a response, he charged forward, swinging his weapon with terrifying speed. Jeho barely managed to dodge, rolling to the side as the blade sliced through the air where he had stood moments earlier. Sung-woo stepped in, firing his rifle at Calther. The shots ricocheted harmlessly off the warlord's armor, enraging him further. With a roar, Calther swiped at Sung-woo, sending him crashing into a nearby console. Hyman tried to intervene, activating her disruptor device in an attempt to stun Calther. But the warlord shrugged off the effects, advancing relentlessly toward Jeho. It was down to the two of them now. Jeho discarded his weapon, knowing it wouldn't penetrate Calther's defenses. Instead, he relied on his training, sidestepping each attack and looking for an opening. Finally, he saw his chance. As Calther lunged forward, Jeho ducked beneath the swing and drove his combat knife deep into the warlord's exposed neck joint. Calther staggered, clutching at the wound as blue blood spilled from the gash. With a final guttural cry, he collapsed to the ground, dead. Breathing heavily, Jeho looked around at his team. Sung-woo was injured but alive, and Hyman was already working to reactivate the ship's emergency protocols. "We did it," she said softly. Jeho nodded, though his expression remained grim. "Let's get back to the fleet. There's still work to be done." With Calther dead, the Reichtal fleet descended into chaos. Without their ruthless warlord to lead them, the remaining ships lost all sense of direction. Some fled blindly into the void, while others continued fighting out of sheer desperation. But it was clear their resolve had crumbled. On board the Aegis Dawn, Admiral Jeho watched as the enemy forces scattered. The bridge crew worked tirelessly to track the movements of the retreating ships, ensuring none posed a lingering threat. Hyman stood beside him, her face pale but resolute after the harrowing mission aboard Calther's flagship. "Admiral," an officer called out, "the enemy fleet is breaking apart. Most ships are attempting to escape." Jeho nodded slowly. "Pursue any that remain within range. Disable them if possible, but don't take unnecessary risks." He turned to Hyman. "What about the fortress?" "It's still intact enough to pose a danger," she replied. "If we leave it behind, they could rebuild and come back stronger." Jeho clenched his jaw. She was right. Humanity couldn't afford to leave even the smallest trace of the Reichtal presence in the Warzone. Not after everything they'd sacrificed to get this far. "Prepare the main cannons," he ordered. "Target the fortress. We're finishing this once and for all." The Aegis Dawn moved into position, its massive guns locking onto the remnants of the orbital fortress. Around it, the rest of humanity's battle fleet formed a protective perimeter, ready to intercept any last-ditch attempts by the Reichtal to defend their stronghold. As the countdown began, Jeho took a moment to reflect on what they were about to do. The fortress represented more than just a physical structure. It symbolized the brutality and aggression of the Reichtal. Destroying it would send a message to anyone else who dared threaten humanity. There would be no mercy for those who sought conquest through violence. But destruction always came at a cost. Countless lives, both human and alien, had been lost in this battle. Families would mourn loved ones, and scars would linger long after the smoke cleared. Still, Jeho knew that sometimes hard choices had to be made. Survival wasn't guaranteed without sacrifice. "Fire," he commanded, his voice steady despite the weight of the decision. Bright beams of energy shot forth from the fleet's cannons, striking the fortress with devastating force. Explosions rippled across its surface as critical systems overloaded and collapsed. Within moments, the entire structure erupted in a blinding inferno, consuming itself in a final act of annihilation. Debris spiraled outward, scattering into the endless expanse of space. When the light faded, nothing remained but silence. The Warzone was empty now, save for the drifting wreckage of ships and the faint glow of distant stars. Back on the bridge, the crew let out a collective breath. For the first time in hours, tension gave way to relief. Officers exchanged quiet words of gratitude, while engineers began assessing damage reports from across the fleet. Many ships had suffered heavy losses, but they had endured. Hyman approached Jeho, her expression softening slightly. "It's over," she said simply. Jeho nodded. "For now." She hesitated before speaking again. "Do you think this will end the threat? Or will there be more like them?" Jeho didn't answer right away. Instead, he gazed out at the stars, visible through the viewscreen. The universe was vast, filled with wonders and dangers beyond comprehension. The Vragtal might have been defeated, but humanity's journey among the stars was only beginning. "There will always be threats," he admitted finally. "But we've proven today that we can stand against them. As long as we stay united, we'll survive." Hyman smiled faintly. "Then I guess our work isn't done yet." "No," Jeho agreed. "It never really is." In the days that followed, humanity's battle fleet regrouped and began the long journey home. Repairs were underway on damaged ships, and memorial services were held for the fallen. Pilots like Dong-sik, whose bravery had bought precious time for the fleet, were honored alongside Marines like Sungu, who had given everything to protect their comrades. Dong-sik's squadron leader, Lieutenant Yoon-jin, delivered a heartfelt speech during one such ceremony. They fought not because they were told to, but because they believed in something greater than themselves, she said, her voice steady despite the emotion in her eyes. Their courage will never be forgotten. Across the fleet, similar tributes took place. Stories of heroism and sacrifice spread quickly, reminding everyone of the price paid for victory. As the fleet neared Earth-controlled space, Jeho found himself standing alone on the observation deck once more. The scars of battle were etched deeply into the hulls of the ships around him, but he felt a strange sense of pride. Humanity had faced its greatest challenge yet and emerged victorious. Hyman joined him quietly, leaning against the railing as she often did. "What happens next?" she asked. "We rebuild," Jeho replied. "We learn from this, and we prepare for whatever comes next. And if another enemy rises, then we'll face them too," Jeho said firmly. "Because that's what humans do. We adapt, we endure, and we keep moving forward." Hyman nodded, her lips curling into a small smile. "Sounds like a plan." Together, they stood in silence, watching as the stars stretched endlessly before them. Somewhere out there, new challenges awaited. But for now, they allowed themselves a moment of peace. The war zone was behind them. The future lay ahead,